Hi, it's pretty cold and windy today, so I thought I would do this from inside the greenhouse rather than in the garden. The family of plants that we call Clematis are divided into various groups, and one group of plants I would want to talk to you about today are the atragenes. They're the Clematis that come into flower in March and April. They are all bell-shaped and they hang down, and in the breeze they look like ballet dancers, I think. They're the most wonderful Clematis. The atragene group consists of about 17 different species, but there are only 3 of these species that are really produced commercially, and those are the Alpenas, the Maca Patellas and the Corianas. They flower in March and April. They come from mountainous regions, high forests, screed slopes, all from the northern hemisphere, Scandinavia, Central Europe, Korea, Japan and America. They don't grow above the snow line and they don't grow in monsoon areas. So that tells us that they're used to the cold and they're used to free draining soil. They're ideal for gardens in the UK as long as you're not unfortunate enough to have a waterlogged garden in the winter, because they will be killed off. They need their crown, and this is the crown. It's the junction between where the stem of the plant starts and the roots going down and stems coming up. That gets larger and larger as the plant gets bigger, but it needs to have that crown kept reasonably dry. Doesn't matter about the roots going in search of water. They will find water and bring all the water and nutrients that the plant needs. But if that's sitting in wet, it will just rot off and the plant will die. If your garden is particularly wet, you can grow them in pots, and I'll show you in a minute how to do that. There are many, many varieties available from garden centres at this time of year. The Alpenas have names like Francis Reeves, Pamela Jackman, Blue Dancer, Willie, Maca Patellas, Markham's Pink, Wesselton, Maidwell Hall, Broughton Bride, and the Corianas, things like Brunette, Amber, Blue Eclipse and Broughton Bride. Many of the varieties on sale in the UK are crosses. They won't be a pure Maca Patella or a pure Alpena, they will have been crossed. Broughton Bride is a cross between a Coriana and a Maca Patella. It was introduced in the 90s, I think, by Vince and Sylvia Denny, and certainly has been enjoyed in many, many gardens. That's readily available in garden centres. In my experience, atragenes don't need to be planted any deeper than they are on the pot. I know some people think Clematis need to be planted deep, and that is true of some of the early large flowered varieties, but not these. These can be planted at the same level as they are in the pot, because they want to keep their crowns from being waterlogged. Then don't sink them too far into the ground. They will find their roots down to where they need for water. Let me show you some ways to plant them. If I were planting the garden, I would dig a hole about twice the size that I'm going to require. I'll probably use some good potting compost mixed with the soil. I would put bloodfish and bone in the planting hole and spread it around to provide a long-lasting slow release for the plant. Water it well, and in the spring I'd give it a good feed on top with whatever you normally feed your Clematis with. They can be specialist Clematis food, chicken manure, whatever you normally use, but do please feed. It's particularly important to feed if you're going to grow in a pot, for example. This is the sort of pot I would use for a clematis. I could keep it in here for about 3 years. I'd use a wigwam of canes, 3 canes, for it to climb on, like some of the plants I have in here that I'm going to show you. And I would use a mixture of rose tree and shrub compost. And I would mix in some Osmocote. I use 14-month slow release Osmocote, and that will keep the clematis fed throughout the season. Once the temperature drops below 70, the Osmocote doesn't work. But particularly if you have these in a greenhouse at first, then the Osmocote will kick in more earlier than if it was outside. I know they're not very attractive pots, but if you've got a nice ceramic pot outside, or in this case a plastic one, you can put it in, and that will improve the look of it. And when the clematis is finished flowering, you take it out and put in the next plant, hopefully another clematis that's just about to come into flower. Now let me show you some examples of the ones I have here. The Alpenas and the Maca Patellas are only different really because the Alpenas look like singles that has 4 sepals on the outside, and a Maca Patella will have far more. Here we are. And it makes it look like a double. It just produces an inner row of sepals as well. The bees can still get in to the pollen. It's not like some other double plants that we grow that are not bee friendly. Both of these plants at the back here, lift them out again, are seedlings from Clematis willi. And it's interesting that you will notice that one there has come out as a single, like an Alpena, and this one here has come out as a Maca Patella, as a double. Both from the same sowing that I did in 2017. But of course the flowers in the garden will have been pollinated by bees and double pollinated, so the different strains could have come from anywhere. This one is it's called Octopus, and again it's a double, it's a Maca Patella. Some Coreanas are like this as well, so don't slave over the distinction. It doesn't really matter. But this has produced a lot of flowers, although this is in a pot and the flowers I think are smaller this year than last year, which may mean that it's had its time in the pot or I haven't been feeding it enough. But I'll have a close look at the roots, and I will certainly feed it, whether it stays in the pot or gets potted on or gets put into the ground, just to bulk the size of the flowers up again. But it has produced dozens and dozens of flowers. And remember, this is late March, so these are very significant introductions to your garden at this time of year to provide some height and some colour. I think probably this is called Helsing Bug, and this is a good example of what I was saying before about them being a bit like ballerinas. In the breeze they just wave around, they're so pretty. This is a young plant, it will grow much bigger than this, but the flowers stay quite small on Helsing Bug. Now I don't know what this is. The label says it's black tea, but it's not black tea because black tea is an early large flowering clematis. But you can see that this is some sort of Coreana, I think. I shall take some photographs of this and put them on one of the websites, Crazy About Clematis, or one of the others, to see if I can get anybody who can identify it. Otherwise it's a new looking one, and if it's different enough to others on the market, it may be worth registering as a separate named variety. I've registered this one. This is called Ros Kelly, named after a friend of mine, and this one produces long purple sepals, and I think this is a cross between Willie and Broughton Bride. They're twisted at the ends, and last year there was quite a bit of green in it. I'll have to see whether that's so this year. We've got about half a dozen plants, and we're trying to ensure that all Ros's friends get one to have in their garden in her memory. This beauty is Westleton. It's been in flower now since the beginning of March, so we've had 4 weeks of flower. The ones at the top are going back a bit, but these ones at the bottom are still in full cry. Look at that beautiful colour. Early in the mornings the sun comes up and shines through them. It's absolutely stunning. And that's grown in a pot. It probably is ready to be repotted or planted out in the garden. This one is a Coriana called Diamond Anniversary. It's a yellowy orangey colour. I have got other Diamond Anniversaries in the garden, but they're different to this, and there's still some, not dispute, but some uncertainty as to what the original flower form is. I bought this one last year because I didn't have the original flower form, and according to Clematis on the web, this is the sort of colour of flower. So we'll see how this develops. Now it's a pity it's so windy today because the wind plays havoc with the microphone, but I have other plants I can show you that are in full flower in the garden or are just coming out, and if the weather is all right in the next 48 hours I'll take the camera out there and do that. But I hope from what you've seen here that you can conclude that it's a wide variety of colour and choice for March and April, that these plants fill a very important gap in the garden, and you can grow them in your garden. If you've got too damp a garden, you can even try this. This is a pot with the bottom taken out. You'd probably get a more attractive pot than this, but you could part sink this pot into the ground just to give it some stability. Fill this with very good compost mixed with grit, so that it's a very light and easy to drain medium. Put in a Maca, Patella, an Alpena or a Coriana in here and feed them, and they will grow on, and they will get their roots down through that hole into the ground to get the nourishment that they need. You just keep them fed, and the crown will be above the level of any dampness in your garden, and the plant should not only survive but it should thrive. Anyway, worth a try. Well, I hope you found this video to be useful. I'm going to do more throughout the season on different groups of Clematis. I've done one recently on sowing seed, which I'll put on YouTube. If you want to give me any feedback, I'll be delighted to have it. My name's Ken Black. I grow Clematis, and as you can tell, I'm an enthusiast.